like I said, this is our first panel that we've ever had, and it's about costuming and makeup effects. And with us today, we have three Outer Banks locals, and we're super excited because here we are on the edge of the earth, but we have some really talented people out here. So we just kind of want to let you guys tell your story, and if we have any visiting filmmakers, maybe you guys can collaborate, and who knows what'll happen. But first, I'm going to start with you. This is Lance Culpepper. There he is. And Lance, you have worked on a number of things, and I know one of our people said they had lunch today at the Lost Colony, and you have actually done costuming. Is that right for the? And then you also did costuming for a show called A Haunting that you may have heard of. So I'm gonna. You can use the mic if you want here. This is Lance Culpepper.
Sure. Well, it's really great to be here today. As she said, my name's Lance Culpepper. I'm currently the associate producer over at the Lost Colony Outdoor Drama, and have been for about 10 or 11 years. But before that, I had a career in television. I worked for about 10 years for a production company out of Virginia that produced a show called A Haunting for Discovery Channel at the time. I think now American Travel or Travel America has picked up that show. And so it was a ghost story television series. Each episode was based on actual first-hand account ghost stories. And as you can imagine, being on basic cable, we were very budget constricted and had to be very creative then in the ways that we approached the project and what the story was going to be told. I want to give our other panelists here a chance to introduce themselves as well. I'll start with my left.
Let's go right this way. Sure. Hi, my name is Evie, or Evelyn Gallagher. I have been doing special effects for about 3 years now. I am a self-taught makeup artist, and I find it fun doing just creative ways to work on low-budget things, like Lance was just saying. So I've done it for 3 years, and just a year ago, I started working with Skip Wallace up there and doing his movies with him, and I have done a total of 3 movies, which will be premiering tonight at 6 if you want to see that. So I really love doing it, and I just started getting into it. So I've done a lot of it. I haven't done a lot, but I have started building up more and more. Right, and I'll lead into him.
Thank you.
My name's Jason Hill, with the 501st Legion. It's a screen-accurate costuming group. We do some charity get-togethers, throughout the year, and raise some money for some groups. But more importantly, we like to have fun. But for the last 4 years, I've been focusing mainly on Star Wars stuff, and the amount of research that we have to do is pretty extensive. You got to go screenshots after screenshots and digital version, and everybody's arguing over this and that. So really, you kind of have your own interpretation, but there is a lot of research already done. So it's fun. Also, you have to be practical, be able to go around town and find, cheap and easy methods to make things work. We do that a lot. Find some stuff at the thrift store is always your best friend. And, of course, the internet, scouring the internet for little pieces and parts and greeblies. But anyway, I'm going to give it back to you.
So as any of you who may have tried to tell a story or put together a Halloween costume, it's all about the character. And how do you communicate that to your audience? And in order to do that effectively, you've got to know who your audience is. Is it a group of elementary students, or is it your peers, or is it a group of professionals that may have been doing this much longer than you have? And so it really changes your perspective. I think we would all agree on how you view the aisles in any store you go into, no matter if it's clothing, whether it's hardware stores, or in some cases the grocery store as well, and what products you're looking for. With working on A Haunting, we first started that project. It was atypical for us at New Dominion Pictures, which is the studio I worked for, in the sense that most of our other programming was based in law enforcement or emergency response or military programming. And so moving into the world of the supernatural, A Haunting was, for me, with enjoying being scared, was a great change of pace for me. And so I really enjoyed, especially since these stories were supposed to have been based on actual events. With them airing on Discovery Channel, we had to make sure that these programs were told from the witness's perspective. So we could not show a third party's interpretation of what had happened in the event. I don't know if you quite follow me there, but so if someone describes a situation, that's the way we had to portray it on television. Now, also with it being basic cable, we had to be careful about how graphic we were or the way in which we told it. But some of our challenges were time and money. And so we would get a script about a week out of production. Unless it was a 2-hour. We actually launched the series with two 2-hour television movies. And but for the hourly series, we would get our script about a week in advance, have our production meeting at the beginning of that time, go into casting, start to order supplies that we knew we would need to create these looks, and then be on set for 3 to 4 days, shooting about 12 hours a day. We had a staff that would help with shopping. My job as costumer was to actually determine what those looks needed to be. And because we interviewed people in real life, we tried to cast actors that looked as close to those individuals as possible and extrapolate from those pictures of them how they dressed, what their personal sense of fashion was. And then the other layer of that, of course, is what do these supernatural things look like? Be they ghosts, demons, or just shapes. And how do you, we were just moving into the day of HD. I think we probably were shooting in standard definition at the time, but how do you put your money where the camera is going to see it? Because you can spend a whole lot of money and the camera not see any of it. And so we had to be very, very careful about that as well. But part of that is also making things look lived in and creating that character. I do not want to take up all the time here. So I'm going to pass this on to Evie.
All right, I found that another big part of not only being on a budget, like they said, finding things like whatever you have in your kit or what you have in your house is also an amazing thing to use. For instance, you can use mash up bananas as pus if you needed to. It's really gross, but you could totally use it. And I also think that a big part of it as well is knowing your movie very well. Like you said, your audience, who you're aiming it at, and what's happening in the movie, like especially because you don't want to have a ghosty look into a gore movie. It's just not going to work. So it's a big part of it is, okay, well, let's see how I can do this the easiest and make it look amazing and fit with the film as well. Which is, it sounds very easy, but sometimes it is very hard, especially when you have a limited budget or very limited supplies, because around here, I mean, you can't really go to your local supply store for special effects makeup. You have to go into your local CVS and see what you can scrounge up to, maybe I could put this and this to make a look that's going to work for it. So I think that's especially one of the fun challenges about making films is that you have to challenge yourself as well.
Nice. And I'm plugged in over here now. And Evie, you're so well spoken, but how old are you?
Should I get my... Sorry, my fault. I am actually 16 years old.
16, and you said you just got started just a couple of years ago, and I've heard that, I've heard somebody call you a genius. So I gotta know, I gotta know how you were raised. Did you grow up watching scary movies? Did your parents like how was Halloween for you growing up? Was your
Yeah.
family really into dressing up?
See, I had what was called high anxiety when I was a little kid. That means at the level of age 5, I had anxiety up to a level a teenager would have. So I never watched scary movies. I really just could not do it. And for Halloween, I loved Halloween, but I always wanted to be the same thing that wasn't really scary. And as I got older, I grew out of it. I definitely changed very much. I did not have anxiety anymore. And I think I watched my first, my mom was very skeptical about letting me watch my first horror film.
Which
And it-
was
The Sixth Sense, which
Nice.
I still love that movie to this day. And it really didn't scare me. I loved it. I completely loved it. And that's when I really started getting into horror because
Nice.
I started watching more and more of it. And then I got into special effects makeup as well.
Wow, that's awesome. So you go to our local high school, is that right?
Yes, ma'am. I go to Manual High School.
So do they have like any special classes that you can take, or you're truly just self-taught?
They have a theater arts program, but they don't really teach special effects makeup. So I'm self-taught off of YouTube because YouTube is a great place to learn things.
Yes, for sure.
Uh,
Well, I think you might be the teacher here, like in 6 months, right, guys? So, Jason, I know you have brought with you some. Are you gonna maybe do like a little
Well,
presto changes?
Talking about budgets and going to the thrift store, I put together this Jason Voorhees costume fairly easy. This was just a dollar store hockey mask with some weathering, a little bit of belt strap on the back, and it's hard to find a bald cap, so I just found this cheap skeleton mask, and I put that over top of, or underneath of the hockey mask, and it kind of gives that illusion of the bald cap. With me with the long hair, I don't have to cut my hair, so that was pretty cheap and easy, practical effect. Yep. Yep. So a little bit of paint and make it something it ain't. Also with some of the clothes, I just went to the thrift store, got this jacket and some black and gray spray paint, and of course Jason Voorhees wouldn't be Jason Voorhees without Mom's sweater, right? So that was a pretty important part of the costume, and it kind of gives that really grungy, dirty look, and I made sure to dirty this one up extra. But
Nice. And I know, because, we have a Michael fan in our family, and I was like, do you have to wear the jumpsuit with the mask? He's just looked at me like, why is she asking that?
And the jumpsuit was one of the only things I had to really buy off the internet. And that's just a basic pair of coveralls, just a brown pair of, I guess these are Dickies. And dirtied them up. It's a really easy costume to get into all by yourself and scare the crap out of people. Friday the 13th comes around a couple times a year. It's fun to wear, even with my buddy Matt. We've actually hung out up here for the Friday the 13th. We had the horror festival up here before and stuff. So, but as far as here, I'll take that. Some of the Star Wars stuff. It was getting back to actually dissecting some of the films, and some of the Star Wars nerds, such as myself and Lance, have to go as far as to matching some of the screen-used marks and weathering and patterns, even sometimes in his paintwork. Lance, could you show your paint down here? So he's got to match the weathering and the distressing for some of the screen-used costumes, which it really takes a lot of research.
So
but
now,
it's fun. We have a lot of fun
is
doing
that
it.
yours that Lance helped you make, or that's yours, Lance?
That's Lance's that he built.
Nice, nice. So, I'm sure, like with the Lost Colony and the Haunting, you probably see a lot of like real ghosts and stuff. But the Star Wars, is that like Evie was saying, like with the anxiety, is it kind of an outlet for you to build these costumes?
Since I've moved into a producer type role at the Lost Colony, it's kind of my creative outlet right now. And also, one of the things I love about the Lost Colony, I love history, and I love research. And so I think that's one of the things, well, and I love Star Wars. It was the first movie I saw as a kid, hooked for life, come by it honestly. But the research aspect of it, finding out where they sourced the original parts. The original trilogy is a bit more interesting because they were more found parts where they were going out getting things from hardware, military surplus, and reusing things. Today, they still do some of that, but there's also, they've got a little bit more money now and they can produce some things from scratch. But I definitely enjoy the research aspect of it. Even though there's some creativity within the constraints of matching something. And so it's finding those ways to express yourself. But the other thing about the 501st is that it is an organization that actively tries to and raises money for charitable causes. And so that was kind of the clincher for me as well, to spend so much time to get an approved costume to be able to help make those appearances.
Yeah, because on film, you only need it to look good for just a split second. For us to duplicate these costumes takes months and years of research and development. But anyway, then we rely on techniques, like makeup techniques and things to use around the house, like bananas. Or at charcoal ash. A lot of people will use that to make their weathering on their armor.
And on production work, as you can probably guess, I worked very closely with our makeup artist. We had to be on the same page because we're telling that same story. And so before actually spending too much money going a certain direction with a character, in addition to talking to your director and your producer, it's talking to the makeup artist, because the body of course makes itself on screen, but a lot of times it's the face usually, especially with actors. And so that's a crucial point, and so everything has to work together in concert.
It definitely is. One thing that's big about making the movie with your special effects makeup, even with your costumes, is you definitely have to be on the same page. Your director and producer really has to communicate with you if they want a certain look. I talk to my producer about what he wants, and then I make a kind of a rough draft of it, then send it to him, see if he likes it, then he'll give me feedback, and then I'll have my final result. It's tedious, but it's a really good process because you want that to look good on screen, and give the right effect and emotion to people. Because you don't emotion is a very big thing about it. If you see someone with a gash, you're going to feel scared or worried. And if it's not looking right, then they're not going to feel scared or worried. They're just going to think it looks very strange. So that is a big thing with it.
I think one of the challenges sometimes is if you're working with a new director, or sometimes on A Haunting, we had a couple of different producers who would rotate with the stories, is expectations of when the actor is first called to set versus when they expect them in front of the camera and to be camera ready. And that has been known to cause some stomach churning moments, I think, for me. And I know you never have as much time as you would like to have on our end of it. As far as makeup goes, I know I would fuss with something until you tell me I can't. So, but have you had any? What's been the biggest challenge for you, Evie, on set as someone first time on a project like that? A short film, something that I guess, what's been the most ambitious project you've worked on?
The most ambitious, I think, is probably balancing working on that and doing my schoolwork since I am still a student. It's it's tough doing that, like trying to get my looks done and doing it at the same time. But I also kind of like it because it pushes me even more, and it is definitely something that pushes me and it makes me even better. So my whole thing is just time, and even doing makeup looks, like sometimes we have to have it. We're gonna start filming at this time, and I have to do this look in 30 minutes. So I try to do it as fast as I can while still getting it done quick enough and making it look good and ready for screen. So I think that's another difficult part.
I just have to say, I know that Lance and Jason are just a couple of years older than you, but they've been studying this for their whole lives, and I find it amazing that you just started, and you're definitely a natural, I think, wouldn't you guys say? So how did you find our local filmmakers? Like, how did they find you?
It was definitely a friend of a friend situation. My grandmother works at our local aquarium, and she knows some people who know Skip, and then it's just, like I said, it's a friend of a friend type of thing. And she gave me his email because she thought I would definitely be interested in it, and he was looking for a makeup artist. So I emailed him and got everything set up and went on the first day of the shoot, which was our film Boy.
Nice. Well, we are all super excited to see your work and the local films. Did you guys want to talk about anything else? Evie, where do you think you're going to go from here? Do you think this is going to be a career for you, or are you just one of those super talented people who's like, oh, I'm just going to do it in my spare time for fun?
I most definitely want to turn it into a career. I'm actually it's my sophomore year in high school, and I'm definitely starting to look for colleges. It is difficult to look for colleges for this because it's it's not something you really find every day that someone wants to do. So I'm definitely going to end up going to a trade school. I don't know where yet, and then from there, we'll see.
That's awesome. Do you guys have any words of advice for young Evie?
You know, I think follow your passion, and I think you're already doing it. You know, doing it is most of the battle there. So, and through those connections you mentioned earlier, it was a friend of a friend. You know, how you found Skip. That will continue to work that way. So as long as you're involved with a project, I think those doors will continue to open. You always want to challenge yourself. Never be afraid to take on a project that you've never done before, because that's, I think, how you learn and how you will develop those skills out of necessity. And even if it's a total failure, I can have a laundry list for you. But it's through those mistakes and through seeing something in application that doesn't quite work that you learn. And so I'm just excited that Evie is involved at this age, because it's never too young to start with this.
Thank you.
I would say the same thing. Just stay creative. Don't lose, your imagination, and don't be afraid to try different techniques. I'm sure you didn't come up with the banana trick, without a little bit of trial and error. So that's awesome. Good job. Good luck in the future.
Do any of you guys have questions?
Any questions at all?
Yes, sir.
Kind of what Lance hit upon for everyone, what has been your most challenging project and how did you overcome it?
Well, a lot of trial and error. My biggest project, I actually thermoform some of the armor now, so I've kind of moved on from just prop building to prop making and manufacturing. So I've actually gotten into sculpting now and everything, so that's a little bit more production and kind of gritty, hands-on, cutting my fingers. But it's good stuff, Stay with it. What about you?
I think my most challenging project was the first movie I did because, I've never done anything like that before at that time. So it was definitely a leap out of my comfort zone, but obviously it did very well. And I had to learn how to push myself and really get the right look I wanted, and learn even more.
And there's, gosh, I've got a couple of things. There's a project I've been working on now for about 2 years, and I'm still trying to learn paint techniques. I put the costume on hold because it involves several layers of paint, several different types of application. I've learned leather work. I haven't gotten into sculpting yet, though. I'm really, really intrigued by that, and that's an application that Evie, I'm sure, is into. As far as a challenge, while I was on set, I know one of the biggest challenges I faced that was kind of high pressure for us, we were doing a program called Daring Capers, and it was historical crimes. And so we were doing a piece that was set in the 70s, multiple locations. We were shooting in Norfolk. We were shooting at the hotel presidential suite at Regent University, and then we're transferring locations downtown to shoot at the Wells Theater. And there's a character, a bellhop, that we ended up, we had only one look for this guy, and shooting on location. For that project, we had about 30 actors with us. I was the on-set wardrobe supervisor at the time. I wasn't the costume designer, but I was the one responsible for getting people into costume on time to be in front of the camera and to maintain continuity. And so we relied heavily on the actors to kind of help police and return their wardrobe to our vehicles before we changed to location. Well, we got to the, actually we had shot at the Wells first, and we were arriving at the Regent Hotel, the Regent University, and the bellhop had left his costume hanging on the back of the bathroom stall door at the Wells Theater. And so way too far away to run and get that. We were already late into the night. It was about 11 o'clock at night, and it's a featured character. I mean, the bellhop's supposed to come up to the door at the hotel, knock, and the person answers. Full light, you know how well lit some hotels can be. So unfortunately, it was not a noir piece or, you know, ultra moody. So, and he had a waistcoat. It wasn't just a regular type of suit coat. It was very distinct. Fortunately, we had enough inventory on the truck, backup wardrobe stock for extras. I had something that was similar in color, and we kind of took some safety pins and pulled the coat up and made some alterations there on the spot. And we, of course, let the first AD, the first assistant director, know what the problem was that we had run into and how we were attempting to address it. So they were able to then work with the DP and knowing, okay, this is something that we might have trouble matching in the editing room. Let's see how we can either frame the shots so that we can hide that continuity error. I don't remember how it really came out, but you know, things like that happen when you're on set. I've also, you know, pulled up on location. The wardrobe truck has just gotten there. The director and the electrics crew who have gotten there, they've been set up for a half an hour, and they're calling for talent in their costumes on set. And so it gets a bit hair-raising. It's a little, I like the pace here a little bit better, but I do miss being on set at times.
Yes, well, again, we are trying to promote the Outer Banks in North Carolina, and we're going to probably put some of this on YouTube. So do you think that's a good move, Evie?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Because we want to let the world know that not only do we have beautiful scenery, all different kinds, we have super talented people, and you guys are just waiting for film to come here. And yeah, you guys would take work, right? If we had some big movie shoots come here, and because we've actually had some calls this year at, you know, asking for local, you know, craftsmen and talent, and we think that's awesome because we know it's here, and we're just very thankful that you three have come out today, and we're gonna follow your career. Don't forget about us, okay?
I won't. Definitely not.
Like when you're super big and famous, like come home for Christmas, like. Thank you guys so much for being here today.